The labeling of opinion content is something the news industry really cannot afford to keep getting wrong. We know that news consumers complain a lot about too much opinion in their news, and sometimes those are really valid complaints. Maybe there's a personal essay that isn't labeled that way, or sloppy sourcing that makes it unclear who's talking, where opinions are credited then to the reporter, or just honest bias that is creeping into news coverage more than it should. And if you think about it, there is a whole lot of news that looks like this: talking heads on a panel where it's real hard to tell who is talking. Who of these people are sources, who are journalists? If they're journalists, what are their jobs? It's very hard to tell. But we cannot source this problem completely to cable news. We're not always clear in text journalism on websites what content is. We also use words that are not clear to the audiences the way that they are to us in the newsroom. What's a letter? A column, a commentary, an analysis, a review. What is each of those things and who writes it? And why do we continue to be unclear about it? One of our partner newsrooms learned in an audience survey, they got a comment that said, change the restaurant reviewer. She's very biased. So even the idea that some journalists are paid to share their opinion is not something people automatically understand. So as with many perceptions of news, we can be frustrated that people don't automatically understand that, or we can do our best to clear up the misunderstanding and explain it ourselves. Another problem is that we might label things well on a website, but the labels don't travel well to each platform. Here's an example of an editorial that has a nice kicker above the headline and a byline that said it was written by the editorial board. However, when that link is pasted into Facebook, it looks like this. And there is nothing in the headline as it appears on Facebook that indicates that it is an opinion piece. As opposed to this example that has the opinion kicker above the headline, a byline to the editorial board, including a link that explains more about who the editorial board is and 2 sentences right on the story page that explain what an editorial board is. And then when that is pasted into Facebook, the opinion kicker appears automatically at the front of the headline. Make sure that when content travels to newsletters, to social, to apps, to aggregators, that it's impossible for someone to see that headline and not realize that it is a piece of content that is designed to persuade or share an analysis rather than straight news. In addition to labeling, it's really important to be more descriptive about what this content is. Who's writing it? What is their expertise or perspective? So with that restaurant reviewer, what is that person's job? What are they paid to do? And what qualifies them to do that? Here's an example of a headline and byline that shows up nicely with an automatic green bar across the top. This is in the Gannett CMS that says this piece expresses the views of its author, separate from the publication, and then a byline that says opinion contributor. In this case, there's a tagline added in italics at the end of the story that says who that opinion contributor is. We have to remember that our readers don't understand automatically whether this author is a staff member, a regular columnist, a guest columnist, like in this case, a government official, a professor with expertise to share. Too often we let that be unclear. And if we do not take ownership over the clarity of our opinion content, nobody else will.